So, why is it that so many of us find it so hard to just sit down and get lost in a good book anymore? In this analysis, we're going to explore why our attention seems to be shrinking and why focusing on reading feels like such a struggle. I mean, really think about it for a moment. When was the last time you actually, truly just fell into a book without any distractions? If you're finding it hard to pinpoint a time, well, you are definitely not alone. It's a feeling a lot of us can relate to. The philosopher Bertrand Russell had this incredible way of describing this feeling, and this was almost 100 years ago. He basically said, modern life is like being stuck on a treadmill. You're constantly running, always busy, but you never really feel like you're getting anywhere. And that kind of frantic energy, it's the exact opposite of what you need for quiet reading.
So, is this just on us? A personal failing? Maybe a lack of willpower? Or could it be something much bigger? Could this collective struggle to focus actually be a symptom of the era we're living in? To get to the bottom of that, we've got to look a little deeper.
And to really understand this, we need a tool that helps us kind of zoom out from our own personal frustrations and see the larger forces at play. And it turns out there's a great tool for this from the sociologist C. Wright Mills. He came up with this concept called the Sociological Imagination, and it offers a really powerful way to look at our own lives. Basically, the sociological imagination is this quality of mind that lets you see the link between your own private life and what's happening in the wider world, in society and history. It's about realizing your personal story is part of a much, much bigger one.
Mills breaks this down really well. He says, look, if one person in a city of 100,000 is unemployed, that's their personal trouble. But if a whole nation has 15 million people out of work, that's not just a bunch of personal troubles, that's a public issue. You have to look at the whole structure of society. So, what if our inability to read is a public issue and not just a personal trouble?
To answer that, let's dig into one of the biggest forces shaping our daily lives, the way our society actually organizes and controls our time. This is something the philosopher Michel Foucault thought a lot about. He argued that power in the modern world isn't just about police and laws. It works in much subtler ways, by shaping our habits and even our sense of time itself. Her whole society is obsessed with efficiency, right? Every single moment has to be useful, productive, optimized. We're supposed to squeeze every last drop of value out of every second. In that kind of world, there's just no room for so-called wasted time, like, say, spending a whole afternoon just lost in a novel. And this constant pressure for optimization, well, it feeds into what Bertrand Russell called a philosophy of competition. Life starts to feel like one big race. We get so focused on winning and achieving that we neglect our senses and our minds, which makes it really hard to just enjoy things that don't have a clear goal or a prize at the end. So what's the actual cost of living like this? What does this relentless pressure to perform do to us, psychologically and even physically? Well, it creates a very specific condition that Russell identified nearly a century ago. He had a name for it: nerve fatigue. And he saw it as a uniquely modern problem, born from city life and industrial society. It's totally different from just being physically tired after a long day's work. And the things he said cause it, well, they sound like they were written yesterday, not 100 years ago. The constant noise, the stress of being surrounded by strangers, the hurried pace of everything, that constant low-level anxiety about money, all of it just drains our mental batteries, whether we realize it or not. And the worst part about this nerve fatigue is that it's like it puts up a screen between you and the world. Everything becomes a little dull, a little fuzzy. But deep, focused reading, that demands the exact opposite. It requires a rich, intense connection with the text. And that's precisely what this fatigue chips away at. And it doesn't stop there. Thinkers like Herbert Marcuse took this even further. He argued that our whole consumer culture is designed to flatten our thinking. It encourages us to passively consume things instead of thinking critically, turning us into what he called the one-dimensional man. And that makes the kind of deep engagement that reading requires even tougher. Okay, so if the problem is this big social condition of fatigue and shallow sinking, what on earth is the solution? It's probably not what you're expecting. According to Russell, the answer isn't to just, try harder or be more disciplined. That actually just adds to the strain. No, he said the answer lies in cultivating impersonal interests, basically hobbies and leisurely activities that you do for no practical reason whatsoever. It sounds a little strange, but these useless hobbies are actually incredibly useful. They give your brain a real break from the pressure of always having to decide and act. They let your subconscious mind just kind of work things out in the background. They give you a sense of perspective, reminding you that your worries aren't the center of the universe. And most importantly, they help you reconnect with the world in a fun, genuine way. It's this obsession with making every single moment productive that's a direct path to burnout and anxiety. The cure, as Russell saw it, is to intentionally make time for things that serve no purpose other than the joy they bring you. So this leaves us with a really big question, doesn't it? If we start seeing our struggle to read not as some personal weakness, but as a public issue tied to the way our world works, how do we actually carve out space for the beautifully useless act of reading? How do we reclaim our time and our attention from a culture that demands we be productive all the time?